Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? This is Joe, and I'm with my good friend Dan. Dan, say hello.
Hello, and welcome back to the Hounds podcast, the number one rated podcast in the world on Firewood.
That is going to be a recurring theme, I think, with our podcast.
Yes,
is that
indeed.
We are the number one rated Firewood podcast in the world.
Yes, and I would, on that topic, I'd like to give a big shout out to all our fellow Woodhounds over there in Ireland across the pond listening in. So, there's some wild ones out there. They're all over.
I can speak from experience that I think for my YouTube channel, I have, over 50 countries that regularly listen to my channel.
Yeah. Yeah, so the podcast, I think, like you said, it's the number one Firewood podcast in the world.
Yeah.
And it's great to be connecting with all of you out there, all you Woodhounds around the world.
Yeah, and even though we are known as the Woodhounds here in the podcast universe, we are just but two, because the whole world is just populated with Woodhounds
Everywhere.
We're just and we're happy to be here and bring this podcast to you.
And if you're listening right now and you're wondering, am I a Woodhound? You just stay tuned. In one of these episodes, we'll get into that.
Yeah. Well, if you are new to the channel, thank you for tuning in. If you are a regular listener, thank you for coming back. It means a lot to us. My name is Joe, and I am a small YouTube channel known as Ohio Woodburner, and my good friend Dan sitting across from me here at Woodhound Studio.
I am also a small YouTube channel under the title of Back 40 Firewood.
Yeah. When you say small, I kind of smile because you're not a small channel.
Oh, I'm small. In the grand scheme of YouTube channels, I still consider myself small.
Not in the firewood niche. I don't think either one of us are small. I think we do pretty good.
Yeah,
we do. But when you think, because there are channels out there, that, and what people try to do in YouTube is they try to monetize, and they can make money from the ads that run on the channel. And I don't know. Well, I do know of some channels out there that make life-changing money.
Yes.
And I know, I know that I do not. So
same here. I do not. I wouldn't mind.
I would not call it chump change.
No,
but it is. I'll take it. But it is not life changing. It's nothing to where I could quit what I'm doing and just drive around in my Maserati.
Right.
We still got a ways to go for that.
But every channel that is on YouTube, they all start somewhere, and you always start with your first subscriber, and you start small and you build. And, it's kind of like with firewood. When you're getting into firewood, whether you're making it for yourself or you're making it to sell, you start small. And, when you started out, Joe, what were some of the things that you had or that you think people maybe should have when they start getting into firewood?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you what I don't have and what I did not have, and that was a poof machine. And that would be this. One day I'm going to invent this, and I'm going to rule the world. It's a machine, and it has a button on it, and you push it, and poof, anything that you have ever need is now right in front of you.
Nice.
You need a stack of firewood, push the button, poof, there it is.
Well, when you get that prototype done, I will be your user acceptance testing person.
Yeah. But because I did not have a poof machine, I got into firewood as a way to heat our house. We bought this house, and it sits out in the middle of a cornfield, and we got a good deal on it because the guy, whoever was building it, walked away from it. So it was half built. But what we didn't know was the house wasn't on the gas line. And we started heating with propane. When we got our first bill, we were like, "Oh my God, we can't afford to heat this house." And we're making the kids do jumping jacks to stay warm, and we so I started looking for different ways to heat, and that's where I found these outdoor wood furnaces, and that's how I got my start. But again, what
Yeah.
I didn't know was just how hungry these things are. They use a lot of firewood, and that's what got me into firewood. But I began probably the same way that most people do. I call it a poolin and a pickup. I had a pickup truck and I had a Walmart poolin chainsaw, and I got my start.
Yeah. Well, I grew up on a farm where we heated with firewood. So from the day that I could walk and be outside, my dad would make, firewood in the fall to be burning the next year. And so then I just, gradually, when I built this house, I'm like, that's the one thing I wanted, was to be able to heat with wood, because I saw the efficiency in it as far as not having to pay a propane or a natural gas bill. But I as well have an outdoor wood boiler, and they eat a lot of wood.
Yeah, they really do. What tools did you get started with? I would imagine you had a chainsaw.
Yes, my dad had a chainsaw, and he had a old, like a big box store splitter. Just a real slow.
Right.
I think it was 28 ton. It would go vertical for the big stuff, and that was it. And then, obviously, being on a farm, we had tractors, and such to move wood around. But yeah, it was just chainsaw. We'd go out in the woods in our back 40, and we would, cut up trees that had come down and process them into firewood.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how old you were when you first ran a chainsaw?
When I first ran a chainsaw, I do not know how old I was. I think it was in high school sometime, like maybe junior, senior year.
All right. So not like 10 then.
No.
But you were out there stacking.
Yes,
as a 10-year-old.
I was. That was the thing growing up. I mostly did a lot of the stacking.
Uh-huh. Would you guys split your firewood, or would you just leave it in round?
Nope, we split everything, and we'd stack it along our one big shed, and then along the barn. And then in the winter, when we were using it, we could only bring so much into the house at once. So that was another chore of mine, was to go out and bring wood in and fill up the basement with wood.
Mm-hmm. When I got my start, no, I did. We would go out when I was a little boy. We would go out and get firewood, and we had a little top handle chainsaw that we used. Nothing major. When we started firewood here at the house that we live at, I went and picked up a couple Walmart Poolin chainsaws, and they're 12-inch saws. The thought with the outdoor wood furnace was you can cut your wood longer, and usually if it fits in the hole of the door, it's going to burn. So I had my saw had a 12-inch bar, and that's really about the max that I ever cut. And I never split anything. So I would just have an entire woodshed of rounds, never split anything.
Ah.
And it wasn't until I bought my first real chainsaw. It was a Husqvarna 455 Rancher, and I still have it. Had a longer bar, and that's when I needed to start splitting wood. And I got a maul.
No.
And I learned about splitting wood. I enjoyed doing that. I enjoyed splitting wood with a maul for about 5 minutes. and then I didn't feel like doing it anymore. And I thought, if I am to keep this up, I need to get a splitter. And that's what I did. I went out and bought a Troy built 27-ton hydraulic splitter.
Yep. Yeah, once you start burning and you realize how much you burn, and then you start thinking about how much you need to make for the next year, the maul and the wedges and the axes are like, oh, yeah, I got to replace. I got to replace those.
There are people out there that just live, to split with an axe, split with a maul.
Yep.
And that's just their thing. And man, I watch a couple of them on YouTube videos, and geez, my back hurts watching them.
Yeah.
splitting like that. But that's, what, to each their own. But I, if I can't help but think, as you get older, that's got to have an effect on your joints with all that impact and that shock going through your elbows and your
Right.
shoulders and all. So, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's enter the hydraulic splitter.
Right.
Mm.
That's where that really makes it, well, it makes it easier as far as the splitting. With some splitters, you still have to get those big rounds up on there. So,
Right. Well, most of these, we call them the big box splitter, and it's like an I-beam with a toe plate and a knife that's on the ram,
yep.
and it's run with a little lawnmower engine. And the benefit of them is you can pick them up to vertical. They're on a hinge. So
Yeah.
if you do have large pieces, you can roll it up to it and not have to pick them up off the ground.
Yep.
But a person that has a log splitter like that, you learn eventually that splitting vertically, I think, is harder on your body than it is picking it up, and doing it while you're standing up, because you're squatted, it's hurting your knees and your hips and your back.
Right. You're bent
Uh,
over running
uh,
the lever. That's the one thing I always remember is I'd stand there bent over running that lever up and down, and after a few minutes you'd stand up and your lower back was just, tight and just sore.
yeah. And that's where I think, when we're talking about the equipment for firewood, people, I think, evolve now. I think for people that just make a cord or a few each year, I think that type of splitter is all you need.
Yep.
But that is also the one thing that was my blind spot when I got into this, was I thought that was the only kind of splitters there are. and that is not the case. There's all kinds of different splitters out there. There are electric ones, that split both directions. There's big ones and little ones. There are
Right.
professional grade where, they can just knock out and split wood in the blink of an eye. And then there's the kinetic type splitters that don't even use hydraulics. There's just this whole universe of splitters out there.
Right. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where I think when with firewood, you almost get into that crossroads of, are you only making firewood for yourself, or are you making it to also sell? And when you start thinking about selling and mass producing, that's when I think you start searching and finding those
Mm-hmm.
more commercial grade splitters, or the higher output machines, or even like your super splitter. I mean, that thing can really split a lot of wood quick.
Yeah. If you people don't know what a super splitter is, it's a kinetic splitter, and it's just it uses kinetic power, 2 flywheels and a rack and pinion, and it has a 2-second cycle time, and it's a different way of splitting wood. And it's I think every tool has its strengths and its weaknesses, and there's not a tool that can do everything. So
Right.
like where the hydraulic splitters have a reputation of being super slow, but they can split anything. The kinetic splitters have a reputation of being super fast, but they struggle on some challenging logs. But that's where I think it gets to what are you doing? What are you doing with firewood? And I think too, everyone is probably on the same path, or has been on that same path, where there is a level of fun and satisfaction of making firewood. Otherwise, I don't think anyone would do it. And to be able to provide, I think you get down to some primal um, benefits
Yep.
from being able to have the ability to go harvest firewood and prepare it and have it ready for the wintertime, because it's a lot of work,
Right.
and you need to spend money on tools.
Yeah.
And if you really get down the brass tacks, you've probably spent more on a chainsaw. Some of them are pricey,
Oh, I
that
know. I
you
know.
that you could have bought an entire year's worth of natural gas,
Right.
for one saw, depending on how big your house is. So that's what I think is that appeal with firewood is, that the wood, okay, has an appeal to it, but I think it's also the tools.
Right.
and it's not just the tools that make noise, with gasoline engines. There's a lot of other, tools out there that support, like a hookaroon, a pickaroon, a PV.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever
And
used those before?
that was one of the first tools in that category that I bought was the log ox. And let me tell you, what a game changer that was as
Uh-huh.
far as saving my back from picking up rounds, moving rounds, from if you fell a tree down in the woods and you buck it up right there and you have to carry the rounds, say, out to your truck or your trailer. I mean, that thing made it so much better. But
Uh-huh.
I haven't used a pickaroon, so I'm not sure how those are, but yeah, the PVs, the cant hooks,
Right.
moving logs around. Yeah, all those hand tools are, to me, essential.
Yeah, I have a hookaroon and I have a PV. And if our listeners don't know, a hookaroon is like a stick with a metal spike on the end of it. And you can sink it into a piece of wood and pick it up and drag it. It saves your back where you don't have to like bend down and pick something up. A PV or a cant hook, there are subtle differences between the two, but they really do the same thing. It's just a long pole with this menacing looking hook on the end of it. And you can like grab a big long log like a telephone pole laying on the ground, and it becomes a lever and you can roll it.
Roll it over.
Yeah. So I have those tools. And then I also got the log ox too, that I showed on my channel. And man, it's a popular tool. And what a log ox is, guys, is it's like a 3-in-1, but now it's a 4-in-1 tool where you don't have to buy all these extra tools. It all comes in one. And it really works.
When I first used it, I could not believe how easy it was to use. And like you said, it's multiple tools in one. It's both I don't know how you would describe the main tool of it. It's like a cant hook on with a short handle. Like
Yeah.
like it's not a PV. It's not really a PV. It's not a pickaroon.
And you use that hook to pick it up with.
Yep.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So I really don't think if you have the tools, you may not need the log ox. And then if you have the log ox, you may not need the other tools. And like I said, I have both. And where I think where you can differentiate between them, I think if you just make wood in one single location, like if you have a wood yard, I think having the individual tools makes more sense. I think if you are the type that where you go out into the woods to cut up trees and load up your truck and come home, I think it makes more sense to have the log ox. Now you can't go wrong with either one. They're all great. But that's where I think, because I think, if I'm going to be working in my wood yard all the time, it might become, a pain after a while to have to switch the log ox from cant hook mode, to log ox mode. So I would rather just have the individual tools because they're handy. You can just sink them right into the ground where you're at. You don't even have to lay them onto the ground. You don't have to bend over to pick them up. They just work out nice like that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, changing between the different modes or variations of the log ox, you don't want to have to be doing that, over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. I will say this from experience too. I think a very, very small number of people who are regular firewood, producers, and I mean anyone with a pulling and a pickup truck that's going out into the woods, I think a very small number of them have a log ox or a hookaroon or a PV. Because I never did. I
Right.
would have. It just seemed like it was too much money to spend. But man, after having one, it does. It makes your life so much easier. That hookaroon, that is one of the greatest inventions of all time. I could not imagine living without one right now. That's how
Anyone
important
I've
it is.
ever shown that to and demonstrated it and then had them use it, they immediately were like, this is amazing. I need to get one.
Yeah. And it's such a simple, I mean, it's like it's like a stick,
Right.
it's like a screwdriver, it's just a real simple, elegant tool. And that's what I was just left scratching my head was, why didn't I ever get one of these before? You
Right.
think about if you do firewood every year and every fall you're getting your woodshed filled, think about how many times you have bent down all the way to the ground to pick up a log off of the ground.
Yep. Almost every
Yeah.
all your rounds, or if you don't have like a log buck or a platform, a live deck or something, like all your rounds are on the ground. You have to bend
Every
down, pick them
single
up.
one. Yep. And all it takes is to buy one hookaroon
Yep.
and all your problems are solved. That's what I was saying. I was like, I just literally cannot believe that I've never got one of these before.
Yeah.
What a great tool. And I don't know, how long has that thing been around? I think it's been around forever too.
I'm not sure. I know I've had mine, I think, going on almost 4 or 5 years now.
Uh-huh. The one that I have is a company called Logrite, and it's aluminum, and it has a spongy, grippy handle to it. It's comfortable. Oh, that thing, I usually have it with me everywhere I go.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that all of these tools that we're kind of talking about, when you think of it, they are all kind of made and designed for everything up to splitting of the round. And after the wood is split, there's not a lot out there to assist with moving your splits around other than a wheelbarrow or, something like that. Then you just kind of get see, that's where your poof machine would come in nice. Like see a split,
be nice to have a poof machine.
A split pile of wood and be like, poof, it's stacked.
When you look out in the firewood industry and then you start seeing these gigantic firewood processors, and these professional grade splitters, and man, those processors are something. Like some of them are like $100,000 and up.
Yep.
Why hasn't anyone ever invented a stacking machine?
I know.
So there are some products out there, and there has been some creativity from wood hounds, that are looking, they use those cages from IBC totes. If you guys, so IBC stands for intermediate bulk container. It's got like that plastic bladder in it, and some, there's like oil comes in them, or food grade sugar, fructose syrup, or anything liquid comes in it. What people do is they buy them used, they throw the bladder away, and they use the cage because you can pick it up with a forklift and people will stack their wood into it. So people have gotten creative with that. They've gotten creative with these gigantic bags. These gigantic sacks that have these big loops that you can pick up with a forklift.
But the one thing is, with both those options, you need another piece of equipment in the shape of a tractor or a skid steer, it's
and a lot of people don't have those things.
Right.
There is a machine that I've always thought was really slick, but I think it too comes with limitations. It's made by an Austrian company called Posh, and it's called the Posh Pack Fix. And your wood gets dumped in. It's just this gigantic barrel. And I mean, like you could stand inside of it and stick your arms out both ways and probably touch each side of the barrel. And it's probably about 6 foot tall. And you dump all of your wood into this barrel, and it's got this wrap that's like fishnet.
Okay.
And it wraps around the outside of the barrel while you lift the barrel up. And when the barrel comes all the way out, you have a big stack of, a loose stack of firewood that's secured with this netting.
A contained loose stack.
Yeah. And you can pick it up with forklifts and go truck it off and set it somewhere.
That sounds very interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
I always thought that would be something I could use, but that's when you start saying, well, you need a forklift, and I think you would need to have like a paved lot, because I don't know about how strong that netting is, if the
Right.
seams would blow out if you're driving over bumps and stuff with it.
And then
Yeah.
would you deliver the wrapped bag or mesh bag to the customer, or would you open it up and dump it into your pickup bed?
Yeah, I don't know. That probably comes down to what your delivery model is. I know that
Right.
I wouldn't. I would probably forklift it up to the back of my truck and then just stack it into the truck off of it.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
just the way we do it.
There's all kinds of
I've never thought about
solutions.
delivering wood to a customer, because like on a pallet, because I wouldn't have any way of taking the pallet off of my truck and
Offloading.
setting it. Yeah. And then a lot of customers too don't want that. Some can put it in their garage, but others, they have a rack around the back